And I just want to stop sharing. Oh, you're looking at this room. Sorry, Cody's new to the Zoom scene here. All right.
All right, good. Okay. It's 4:04 p.m. So we will call the September 26th Board of Septic Review Subcommittee meeting to order. Please note that the in-person meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the remote connection. However, this is a hybrid meeting. So we will do a roll call, introduce the members of the board and staff. Thor Akerley, Board of Health member.
Marco Bellow, Board of Health member.
Fred Cowan, consultant.
Chief Sergeant Consultant. Joe Rosa, Board of Health.
Carol White, Assistant Health Director.
Cody Smith, Space Sanitarian.
Dominique Curley, Director, Health Department.
Tony Capichetti with Weston and Sampson, working for the health department.
And I think Eric is joining us right now. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Eric.
No, they.
We just went around and introduced each other. If you want to introduce yourself.
Board of Health, but I handed them to three of them. I thought those only be 4 department members, so I did one to Eric or Thor.
First up is the approval of the August 22, 2024 minutes. I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to review them, but I had no comments.
One correction on page 3, the upcoming meeting should be 4 o'clock, not 3.
Thank you, Carol.
Otherwise, I move to accept the minutes. I will second.
On favor, Thor, yes.
Or yes. Eric, yes.
We have our first hearing for a request to reduce the required 10-foot setback from the property line of 161 Hesperus Avenue to the soil absorption system to 6 feet due to site constraints such as ledge outcrops at 157 Hesperus Ave, and representing the property owner is Peter Blaisdell from Williams and Garages. And since Peter is a coworker of mine, I'll have to recuse myself from this discussion, but I think he's joining on Zoom. He's not already on there.
All right. Are you unmuted? Are you there, Peter?
I can hear you, yes.
Terrific. And would you like us to put your the plot plan up? And
Yep, or if you want to let me share, I colored one up, but it's fine. It doesn't have to have color, whatever you'd like.
that's fine. Are you fine with them?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, Peter, just to be clear, are you going to be reviewing, do you want us to go through each one of the variances that you're asking for? Or LUAs that you're asking for, or you're going to do them piece by piece?
Whatever the board would like to do. I was just going to give you a brief overview, but whatever makes more sense to the board is fine by me.
Okay, so you can share at any time. I think it would be great, just from a point of order standpoint, if it's all right with you, Thor, that we do, that he does follow some protocol. I know you would have to recuse yourself, but just from a point of order operationally, that you'll talk about each one of the things you're asking for and then show that on the plot plan so that the board has full understanding.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Let me see.
Do you see rights to share?
I don't see a place yet where it's going to let me share. I apologize.
All right.
But if not, you can just put it up. It's fine. I don't want to delay your proceedings.
How about now? Does it look better now?
You make a panelist?
I will. I'll make a panelist.
Let's see.
Okay, I'm promoting you to a panelist and then you can do that.
All right. Okay, I think we're there. Hang on 1 second.
There you go.
Sorry. Hi.
No, no worries.
Thor's used to me, so sorry about the shock. Tony is, although Tony has more white hair now than I do, so that's okay. Let's see.
White hand's still here.
So if I can, I'd also just like to remind the board members that you have a sheet of paper that has each variance listed and the rationale that the applicant has provided.
Absolutely. Can everybody see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll zoom up a little bit. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Blaisdell, representing the applicant Matthew Avery. The parcel is located on the north side of Hesperus Avenue. It's a large parcel, about 1.2 acres. We were contacted several months ago. They had a system that I believe was in failure at the time, but it was certainly old. It was listed at the assessor's office as a 2-bedroom system. However, it appears it had been used as a 3-bedroom system for quite some time. We contacted the assessor's office and I believe the Board of Health about this, and there was a walkthrough done on April 23rd of 2024, and then it was confirmed that it was a 3-bedroom. We conducted soil testing on April 23rd as well. The one perk test that we did was a less than 2 minute per inch perk rate, and the soils were coarse gravelly sands. Just to give you an idea, we try to show a little bit, but there's a lot of boulders and ledge outcrops and that type of thing on the east side and the back of the house. Also there's large ledge outcropping, and then down at the bottom of the hill there were some wetlands. So as you can see, we're about 160 feet or so from the wetlands, so we wanted to keep everything to the front. Although it's a tighter space and the existing system was on the west side of the driveway, it was determined that that would be the best place to put that. So we submitted some plans early June 2024. They were reviewed by Isaac Rowe with some comments, and we sent back revisions and a response letter July 23rd, 2024, at the same date that we sent in a variance request. So just to give you an idea of what the variances are that we're requesting. So we are requesting a reduction of the 10-foot setback to 6 feet, essentially because we're just very tight for space on this side of the lot, and to go any further to the east would then conflict with the functionality of the lot, where the wall would have to go, break out, that type of thing. We did ask to have also relief on just using one test pit, basically because the entire leaching pit system were over here. We didn't want to hit the existing system. And then as far as using the reduction for vertical separation from 5 feet to 3 feet for using a Presby system in order to reduce the amount of sand volume we need to bring in, as well as we could lower the height of the wall somewhat. This was reviewed by a third party, Mr. Capichetti, who's sitting right in front of you, and issued a letter, I believe, on a memo, on August 15th, stating that all the outstanding comments had been resolved for the design. I'm sorry if I went too fast. I'm just trying to keep it brief, but I believe that touches on all the comments that we had from the letters and from the feedback that we got from the town. So with that, I can stop sharing the screen and open up to questions you may have.
So this is Cody Smith, City Sanitarian. I reviewed the plan with Tony and took a look at it myself. Regarding the first item, reducing the setback from 10 to 6 feet. I feel like Peter kind of went through it here. If they had slid the system over, then they're gonna have to move the driveway, and then the driveway would get pushed up onto ledge. And so they didn't reduce the overall size of the system. It's still at 100%. It hasn't been reduced. The soil absorption system field itself is still the same size. So there's no reduction there. And then they are putting in the impermeable barrier. So we didn't feel like there was a risk to any of the abutters. There's no, so the setback, even if the abutter on the other side had to ask for some type of variance, they could get within 4 feet of the property line if for some reason they needed to, and the systems would still be 10 feet apart. So my recommendation and Tony's recommendation would be, you know, to potentially just approve the property setback. And are looking at the test pit, only digging one test pit opposed to two. They did try to dig a second test pit on the site. When they tried to dig the second test pit on the site, they encountered the old system. And so they had to abandon that test pit, because it was in the location of the old system, which is. I don't know if it's, yeah, it's hard to see on this plan, but it is,
It's
it's
right
a
in
much
here,
smaller
I think,
system
Cody.
kind of below. And so they didn't have too much space to, you know, dig a test pit outside of that. And since there was an existing system there that was functioning, we felt that one test pit was adequate to characterize the site. So, and then for the ADS, reducing it from 5 to 3 feet. They are using the Presby system, which allows them to reduce that by 2 feet. The applicants, you know, we felt like was going, by putting in the Presby system, they're doing advanced treatment. So we feel that they're kind of, you know, protecting, doing adequate filtration for the groundwater in that case. And so a reduction in this scenario, they haven't asked for any of the other reductions, only the 2 foot. Like I said, they're still putting in the same size soil absorption system, so there's no reduction there. And so we feel that, yeah, all 3 conditions that they've asked for, we're comfortable with. Does the board have any questions?
Well, Peter and Cody, you answered all the questions I had ahead of time. Thank you.
Someone else will have to drive.
No, you should drive, because we have to make a motion to accept, say yes to this, because Thor can't recuse himself from this
okay.
effort.
Well, I will. I moved that the variances requested for 157 Hesperus Ave be approved. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Marco, yes.
Eric, yes. Joe Rosa, yes.
Thank you. I'm gonna stop you from being a.
I was gonna stop myself.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Have a good one,
See you
Peter.
later.
See you, Tony. Great job as always.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Next up, we have 59 Winger Sheik Road, request variance to allow the proposed leaching field to be within 200 feet of the coastal resource area. And a request for variance to allow the proposed septic tank with pump vault and a water loop filter tank to be within 200 feet of the coastal resource area. Represented by Daniel Johnson.
Hi, for the record, Dan Johnson, Domestic Septic Design. I was hired by the homeowner to upgrade the septic system at 59 Winger Sheet Road. Long narrow lot, about halfway down on Winger Sheet on the right-hand side on the beach side. And basically, they have an existing house which they're upgrading the house. They're not increasing the envelope, but they're going up there. Mike DeRosa and Griffin Engineering delineated all the environmental restrictions out there and did the survey. And as a result, they have all the floodplain levels, ACEC lines, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result of that, the 2 cesspools that are here are being upgraded, and the original ACEC line was here. So I did the soil tests outside of all those buffer zones. The entire property is within the 200-foot coastal resource area. So now we're just trying to get out of the regular buffer zones and just get a new septic system in there. And the existing 4-bedroom house was designed with the 2 soil tests, which we found modeling anywhere from about 7 feet to 8 feet below grade. And because of the environmentally restrictive area and talking to the Board of Health, we're doing a pretreatment using a microfast system. So we'll have a standard septic tank, a microfast tank with a pump chamber going to a pressure distribution leaching field. The leaching field is reduced by 50% just to get it out of all those original buffer zones of the restricted areas on this property. Subsequently, about a week ago, we found out that the ACEC line has recently changed. And so I officially delineated, which is not on that, a nice dark line, which is the elevation 10 now, which kind of goes through the leaching area, just through the two tanks. So I called up Tony and said, look, I just found out this last week. Actually, I didn't even look at that till 2 days ago when I got back to work. And I said, I can show it on that, but it really doesn't change the intent of the overall variance I'm going for. In other words, the entire property is within the 200-foot coastal resource area. So obviously, I'm discussing that with you, and at the same time, requesting a local Gloucester Board of Health regulation to allow the septic system for 59 Wingershik Road, for the septic tank, pump chamber, and microfast system to be in 200 feet of any coastal resource area, along with the pressure distribution leaching area to be within 200 feet of a coastal resource area. I'll open up for questions, comments, suggestions.
First, just from the point of order standpoint.
So, we reviewed the plan, and I reviewed it with Tony, this is Cody Smith, the sanitarian. We kind of looked at the site similar to Dan, there's not a lot of options. They're on the private side of Wingershik over there, and so, they're all in the sand, they can't. I think that in this case, they've moved the system, this is probably the only place the system can be installed there. So there's no way to move it outside because the whole area down in Wingershik, as you all well know, is within that coastal resource area. He is providing advanced treatment and a pressure distribution system. And so that should alleviate some of the concerns as far as pathogens getting into the.
This is an improvement from.
This is a large improvement from the two cesspools that are out there. The current lot owner is voluntarily kind of coming forward to make these upgrades. We think that given the site constraints, they've done the best they can with their site. Achieve maximum compliance.
Add a little background on the ACEC conservation ruled. ACEC historically has been interpreted off of NGVD 29, elevation 10. They've now determined that they're going to interpret it as being NGVD 88, so it's about an 0.8 of a difference in elevation, which would push the buffer zone back. However, the request was for work in the 200-foot coastal buffer zone. They weren't all listed, so I think you're safe then.
And I don't know if the conservation has, I guess, approved this plan either. I wasn't able to check with them today.
They asked me to review, Mike DeRoja asked me to review their comments, which is what we said. We're not going to move the system because we're already in the buffer zone. And if we tried to move, we didn't approach on Title V restrictions to the house. So they are aware of it, but they have a final meeting after this because of that change in the ACEC that they have to now address for the house being redone.
So if the board does move to accept it, I would recommend one condition that they submit a revised plan showing the updated line, just so everything's current on the records.
Any questions?
Thank you for the AC. I was gonna bring that up, and I'm glad that everybody saved me from that. I just want to say where the system is now, even though the ACEC impacted it. Now it's where it is now, it's outside the flood zones, which I think is really important because there was just a sweet spot in between the two flood zones.
You just had this little area,
Right,
and that's why I did the soil testing. There was
Right,
the
yeah,
only place we had.
and I think that was important. But I also note that the assessor said that this was a 3-bedroom,
Mhm.
and it's being upgraded as a 4.
Mhm.
Was there a walkthrough?
Yeah, what happened is the original building permit, and Leslie, we went through all this before any determination. That's why it was verified as a 4-bedroom. As a 4-bedroom house, when you went in
And I know from personal experience that in this particular area, groundwater does not drain towards the ACEC, it drains towards the switchback.
And it looks like you guys have a 5-foot offset to groundwater too.
Yeah, there's no Title V variances or even
Yeah.
Gloucester other than the 200-foot coastal resource, right?
Anyone else have any questions or comments? I would motion to approve the septic system design plan for 59 Wingersheik Road with the condition that that Tony had mentioned,
Updated plan.
updated plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Marco, yes.
Or yes?
Eric, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Tony, can you just send me a text and just say, Dan, mark up this and that way I'll
Yep.
submit it next week sometime.
That's right.
Say, Jim.
What?
Oh,
Please tell me it's next.
I don't see it on here.
Rules and regulations we have now. If you Realize.
We don't have
we're
Raymond manually on this?
That's right, that's right.
They're both set at the same time, auto notifications, everything.
Don't recall.
What's the
Sorry,
question?
what was the question?
I'll be back at this one on the agenda.
Which one?
3 Raymond, 2 Magnolia,
We don't have a variance form completed for it or.
they're all submitted, I've given Tony everything.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're not,
Yeah.
it's not on the agenda, we're not
No,
prepared to
because
review it
it's-
tonight.
That one.
I was on the sewer task force.
Okay.
Looked at all areas of Gloucester. Just cost.
Which one is it, Tony?
So you can check the file, all that, you know, when we reviewed 59 and 2 Magnolia,
Better job.
I revised everything, responded and sent, mailed everything,
This
so.
was on the last agenda,
Somebody
the
else
notifications never
Make
went
sure
out.
that, you know, they.
So we need to put it on this agenda, we need to have proof of the notifications, we need to have it as an
It
agenda.
was
So,
longer than
Yeah,
always.
so we have to-
I mean, I
Put it for
could
the-
out of on this one, but
Yeah, no, it's, I think we have to put it on the.
With I mean, yeah, if it was, what were the requests?
We have numerous ones because of the lot,
Yeah,
but
Were the variances or were they?
yeah, local upgrade approval.
Or
and
local upgrade?
Just local upgrade approval, no Title V variance, local upgrade approval and alternative waivers. But all the butters were notified, I sent you
yeah,
I
everything.
think probably the abutters.
aren't here because it's not on the agenda.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be the
if
only
it's
problem.
Not on the agenda 48 hours before.
Right.
If it-
Yeah.
Perhaps if it was not a butter related ones, we could do something.
Dan,
'Cause
sorry
I
for.
actually- Okay, because
sorry for the
actually on
second.
my Board of Health letter, I told them. September 26th, 4 o'clock. I actually wrote down the date, the physical abutter letter, so they were notified. And they were even, whatever happened here, at least.
But it's gotta be, I think by state law, it's gotta go on the agenda.
Yeah, yeah, just, that's,
Okay.
sorry, Dan.
If it's sooner, we could bring it up at the next Board of Health meeting,
Yes,
right? And
Yeah.
then, Dan, so we can invite you to the next Board of Health meeting and put that on the agenda, and then we'll get you in 2 weeks rather than a whole other month.
Sounds good, appreciate it.
All right.
Take care, thank you.
Sorry for that administrative gaffe.
That was 2 readings.
3 Raymond's, 2 Magnolia. It was on the last hearing.
Just missed that.
Yeah.
And move to the Board of Health Forum to approve RDNA registration application for GMGI as recommended by the biosafety.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and so we're taking advantage of having a forum of the board
Sure.
here tonight. And Joe, do you mind if I
Sure.
So the biosafety committee, as part of the regulations, needs to approve an application for RNA. If they have to register, they put in an application to register with the biosafety committee and the Board of Health to operate. And to do that, they've submitted documentation in the biosafety committee meeting on Thursday, July 18th. It was unanimously voted to approve the application and put it forth to the board. And unfortunately, we've missed 2 meetings for those opportunities to be approved due to vacation schedules. And so what we'd like to do now is see if we can have a motion to approve the application for registration that has been reviewed and approved by the biosafety committee. And then Eric Kaplan, I know you're on it. I don't know if you'd like to add anything else surrounding that.
But we did approve it. So I move that we accept what you just said.
Thank you.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Or yes?
Oh, yes.
Eric, yes.
Joe Rosa, yes. I'm sure GMGI will be pleased. They've been very cooperative.
Presented all this great stuff.
All right.
Yes, we're doing the discussion of changes to the City of Gloucester Board of Health on-site wastewater regulations.
So would you, have, if you'd like, you have access to this document that we've created that sort of has all of our comments. Would you like me also to share it on the screen so we can look section by section? Okay, we'll just do that.
It was Word docs, which was printed online. Dave, did you get that? Did you see that? Did you see, did you get an email with it? Or to look at them ahead of time?
Oh, I have a large one.
I wanted to post one.
This is the little ones.
Yeah,
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
If you, yes, because the first run gets really messy,
right.
and then afterwards you can,
Yeah.
but I agree, with you, obviously.
What do you mean? You never agree with me.
So just by way of introduction, as Dominique sorts out your side of things. 2 reasons for doing this. One is the regulations are pretty old and they've been updated in a sort of slapdash fashion through no one's fault. It's just, that's the way it's happened. And secondly, the update should reflect our changing climate. Sea level rise, ground getting closer to the water table. And that's pretty much what wastewater regulations are about, staying out of our water tables. And so those two are the drivers for wanting to make something more rational and appropriate to our times.
And so, may I add to that, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, so what we've done to prepare for this is we asked Weston and Sampson to take the initiative on this, and they took all of the approvals that the SRSC has done in the past that were never sort of cooked into the document, but we are all operating under them. I believe they also looked at other municipalities. They looked at the gaps between what we had in what Title V is already accomplishing since we last updated this. And then we also sent it out to Dan Ottenheimer, former health director here, also a designer in the city. And those on the board who are subject matter experts in this area. So Thor and Dave and Fred, because of his longtime citizen activism, to do a first round pass at changes. And then we met on all the recommendations and where they were, syntax changes or slight things, we just added it in. And so we've tried to reduce it now to the comments that are material that we need to talk through that have impact across, how we operate. And so because there's a lot, I'm not sure we'll get through it all today. The dream was to be able to get through it and be able to present it to the Board of Health at our next meeting in a few weeks. But that may not be possible. However, to be efficient, what I was going to propose is that we maybe skip over things like definitions unless somebody has a big exception to them and just sort of jump right into the meat of it. and then be able to, you know, sort of have any comments that folks are asking about. In the case of, you know, Dan Ottenheimer had some terrific commentary that he provided on our currents as well as other, and so he's not in the room today, I don't believe. I'll just take a quick look and make sure of that. But if we could. Yeah. Yeah, Dan's not in the room. And so, you know, I think we can represent his interest, Tony, you know, certainly can as well. So the hope is that we can just sort of go through as many as we can. So does that sound like a good approach to be able to get through the content? All right. Okay, so. Tony, do you want to just really quickly talk through these things, like
Yes,
there's
sir.
no change there?
So the authority and purpose, that stays the same. That's kind of home rule, standard language. Added in a table of contents, just from a designer standpoint, being able to bounce around, and as well as from your standpoint, trying to review things, be able to cite sections makes things a lot easier. Definitions, just kind of clarified some things, added a couple, like,
Just really quickly on the table of contents side, does this mirror the Title V same path so that a designer can look at both Title V and ours at the same, from a heading
it
standpoint?
does not, it kind of goes through the process in the, you know, definitions. The permit for installers is up first, but then deep holes, design, plans, just trying to follow the design process, just to make it easier for someone coming in and applying. You know, as a homeowner or someone who wants to figure out the process, I think it's harder to follow Title V than it is to follow.
Okay.
It's true. Let's see, we did add a definition for building renovation, and that gets into further down. If you're increasing the size of a building footprint or gross floor area by 25%, we feel that there's some things that you should do. I mean, if you're putting that much of an investment into your property, you know, maybe a Title V inspection is worthwhile. You know, make sure that your system is enough, and then the ability to not sign off on the building permit if you're out of compliance, especially if you have an IA system, just kind of codifying that and giving you some teeth to be able to.
And I just want to say that if you're enlarging it 25%, that's almost a bedroom.
Correct, so it could trigger that as well. So that's what we're trying to walk the line between being too much of a burden on the citizens here,
Right.
but providing some kind of basis beyond what's specifically spelled out in Title V. We also go into the definition of manifestly unjust and just kind of mirror what Title V is. Notifying, you know, the financial hardship, which is called out in Title V as well, is not a reason for a variance, especially in construction.
And making clear that financial hardship is not sole justification for manifesting.
Yes, on like local upgrades and that sort of thing, you can make that argument, but on a straight variance to Title V, it's not gonna fly. Broke down the disposal installers, disposal system installer permit into just some more shorter paragraphs. We did add, we currently ask for
I'm sorry, are you still in definitions?
I know we're going down to.
Can you
section two.
track with me so that you're,
Oh, I'm sorry.
oh, you can look on your screen, right?
Yeah, we're at 3. Or 2.
Section 2 right now. Let me actually go back to this one. So what we're doing is it's basically the same thing that we're doing currently. We do ask for copies of licenses and general liability insurance at time of renewal. It just wasn't in the regs, so we put it in there. We did add that should there be like a problem installer, we can request that they retake the test. If someone's getting the grades wrong all the time and not following the plans, then maybe it's time to go back to the drawing board and just check.
Can you say the number when you're talking about something?
I'm sorry, so that is 2.4. The rest stay the same, rest with an individual, not the company, 2.5, and then the requirement that they're on site for all inspections, 2.6 was in the previous section as well. The section 3 deep hole.
I'm sorry, just really quickly, any comments on 2.2? No? So you guys are in alignment with all of these, so I can just accept, I don't have to explain them anymore. Okay,
So deep holes and percolation testing, some of it is procedure versus actual regulations, but again, trying to make it a little bit more user-friendly. We do use the OpenGov for scheduling soil testing. So we're trying to point them to that from the regulations, designers that are out of town, also that'll be helpful. Then in the tests, we're actually.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question though? I'm wondering, I put a comment in here about if it's worthwhile to ask for photography, the topographic map or photograph of the pit as part of what they'll submit to us, so that we actually have something to fall back on in the areas of dispute.
So generally that gets ironed out in the field because you have someone on staff. So the decision as to where the modeling is, the soil texture, that sort of thing kind of gets discussed on site with your
Locations,
staff.
geographically, anything like that.
Yeah, geographically though, usually the sketch, your staff should be taking their own independent sketch. I think
What's your deal?
you've seen Dave Sargent's field books. It's there's ties, there's references to what he saw, and that's
We want to
just
get away from
good
field books and
practice.
make it a digital document.
So,
but-
yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's a regulation, that's more something that we want to do.
Okay,
So we can take the photos and.
does everybody
upload them
agree
to-
with that? Like, okay,
Similar, the fees need to be paid, go to Concom. We're asking for 2 holes in primary and reserve on new construction.
What number are you at?
I'm sorry, we just
3.3.
And then for new construction where there's ledge prevalent, we want to try and get some holes at all 4 corners if possible, just so I've run into other areas and Gloucester has more ledge than most areas that you get one test hole, you start digging it and it rises up, and now you have an approved system and you have to kind of think on your feet. So and again, for a repair system, it's still better than what's out there with the failed system, but for new construction, it makes sense to try and get a little more soil information.
So I think we had, Thor, you had a question on this one, right? Because you're saying how does 4 corners possibly accomplish ledge?
I was just saying that it's just site specific, like I agree with your sentiment. It's just, there could be, you've seen sites where the ledge is coming up in the middle of the field rather than the corners, and
Yeah,
so it's like you gotta, just be aware of it and use your judgment, and I think the 25 feet makes sense, spacing wise, but I agree, it's, an important.
Yeah, I think we added the line or is directed by the health department designated witness, so.
Right.
Okay.
I think that covers it, because Title V says unless the local approving authority wants,
Right,
addition, but I think that putting that in covers that.
yeah, and that's it, you kind of run into we did 2 tests 10 years ago when we evaluated the site, and here you go, here's your 2 tests, and I think it's only over a certain design flow for additional testing too. I think it's like triggers at 1,000 gallons per day.
Might be 2,000.
2,000, yeah, it's up there for additional testing. So this gives you the ability that when you're out in the field that, gee, there's a ton of ledge out here. We want more info versus.
Right.
Let's see.
So then, so we can just, everybody's all right with that? Okay, yes. I don't know the process here for us all to agree. Do we all have to agree, or who will speak up if you don't
I
agree?
think we just speak up if we don't.
Okay.
At this point, it's just discussion, so.
Yeah,
Yes,
so-
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something people feel strongly about, by all means, please stop.
Actually, that's
and
really
let's-
important right now because we have a quorum of the board and we're not in a hearing. So this is just for feedback to create I think it's really important that our meeting minutes capture that.
Yes.
That we're not agreeing, we're just.
Yeah,
saying
there's
that
no
this is
vote.
We agree to propose it, basically.
So, just requiring 3 perk tests for design flows greater than 2,000 gallons a day. Let's see. The,
So I keep rolling here?
yeah, so those are
3.4.
3.4, that was the,
I wonder if you mean Gloucester Board of Health rather than the Health Department.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
We tried to do a screen for that.
Oh, I missed that one, sorry.
Okay. Thanks.
It gets-
Fred.
there's a lot of Gloucester.
No, we.
I went
we-
through it
yeah.
and searched it. I don't know why that one didn't pop
Yeah,
up.
Um,
One other point to what you guys said earlier about the soil testing pit location. I don't think it would be unreasonable to expect engineers, surveyors to survey locate their test pits,
that does come into the,
but it rarely gets done. And especially in areas where you have ledge or you have resource areas, you know, it's very easy for someone to slide a test pit 5 feet on a design plan.
so what is the recommendation for it?
Not that I would ever do that.
Yeah, but Tori, what was the
I
recommendation?
always ask for them to do that. I'm surprised that, you know, under your tenure, it wasn't done.
it's,
Well, you won't know, right?
I think
So-
that comes under the design requirements, but
Okay.
let's double check.
Okay.
I think that's for the plan requirements, that they're
Okay.
survey located and elevations are provided.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or you,
Just one survey location for the test pits was always comma.
or
Yes.
ties in the field.
I mean, we've been doing ties in the field at least.
Yeah, it's the,
As part of the test pit.
on,
When we're out there, we do ties or ask them to do ties.
on
Yeah,
repair,
that's
that's
fine,
great.
yeah, that's fine.
But when
But
you're in
that's
the,
what we've been doing, but like sometimes
you're in the
there's
middle of
nothing
the
to tie
woods.
to.
I was gonna say, so
Right, so like a lot of the sites I've been on in the last
And those-
2 weeks, there's houses, so we can
Right.
just pick corners and that's really easy.
if you're out in the middle of the woods.
But it's
though,
also
like, yeah, the-
easy to
the 6-inch
rotate up.
pine tree and the.
Well, we
Yeah.
used to spray paint the pine tree.
Yep.
That you take the time from.
Then you can find it again, but you can't necessarily locate it on a plan very well.
Yeah, unless they locate the tree, yeah.
That's true.
So you're saying add perhaps in the design section?
It might
I
already be
think
in the
it's,
design
it
section.
might be in
I think
there.
we talked about it.
Okay.
Let's see,
Which is the next section after.
Sorry. So I want to make sure I'm not missing any comments.
let's see. I think,
I think we got rid of that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so design requirements? Is that where
design
we're at now?
requirements is the old section 2, stays pretty much the same. I just moved table 1 into the text, instead of having it as an appendix. There was one question on,
Last item.
yeah, so the protection for buffer zones, I do understand some of the 200 feet for the coastal resource areas, but then when you get into the flooding, the zone AE versus, so you could, if you're a freshwater resource and you have bordering land subject to flooding, you're only 100 feet away. That same resource at the coast, you're 200 feet away. And in some places, when you start thinking about if the goal is to try and protect from the, potential for increased flood levels, maybe an elevation offset instead of a horizontal offset makes more sense. Because you have some sheer cliff faces. And 200 feet away from that cliff face could be 40 feet in elevation. Versus you're out in this big, broad, flat area that floods, and 6 inches of elevation could be 500 feet away. So it depends what the intent was to protect here.
I don't think we didn't, we're protecting it for a long time. We didn't realize that was in the regulations with the land subject, the coastal flooding.
Well, once we did, we.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's kind of, just one of the things to think about. You know your community better than I do, so,
The rationale for protecting coastal resources is that there are food sources.
yes.
That are taken, so that's a better protection for public health.
Sure.
When it comes to land subject to coastal storm coverage, that's a totally different nut to crack.
Yeah, so that was kind of just a thought that for consistency, I could see if someone were to challenge this.
Right.
That's an argument that, well, why is a freshwater flooding area protected?
Specifically what he just said.
Yeah, well, no, just for flooding. Now, resource areas, I get the coastal bank, especially, and we added some stuff for if you're tributary to a shellfishing bed.
Right.
We want some more enhanced treatment, but that was just something that I called out, and I thought maybe say 1 foot above the listed AE zone, or 200 feet away, whichever is lesser, or, you know.
I think it's something that we really need to think about, and it should be the offset from the bottom of the system. To, you know.
Yeah, no, that's,
Right,
Yeah,
where it is. And we really should, you know, be thinking about whether it's gonna be 1 foot, 2 foot. Title V says 4 foot. for
from the
seasonally high
groundwater, yeah.
Right, so I'm wondering if that's a reasonable number to pick, because Title V picks 4 feet from seasonally high groundwater.
I'm just kind of putting it out there.
Can I just understand your recommendation though? Are you saying that if we do the elevation, it's gonna be 4 feet elevated above what the AC?
The listed,
resource?
you know, I think you provide both a horizontal and vertical. And
Right, but
take
if it's the vertical separation from land subject to, from the flood zone.
Yeah.
Right, if it's the bottom of the system is more than 4 feet from that, then you don't have to.
Yeah, so I think you could keep your 200 foot or 4 feet in horizontal separation and just say whichever is lesser. So if it's a broad, you know, broad flood zone, 400 feet could be a mile away
Yeah.
versus 4 feet on an area with ledge and a cliff.
Yeah.
Is easy. And if it's that broad flood zone, you're 200 feet away, so you have a lot of lateral movement before you're getting. So just,
Good.
And that's kind of why I left that one open-ended, because I think the input is important.
But I think that way it's defensible, because Title V already says 4 feet, so rather than arbitrarily picking a number.
So are you, does that does that cover what you were also describing here?
Yeah.
Heading to the
Yeah,
vertical?
I think that makes sense, and the vertical separation seems a lot more logical to me.
So it's an or
And
then.
yeah, generally where you have flood zones, you're going to have, you know, wetlands, coastal resource areas. You know, and I think the flood zone is important to protect, but obviously it's important to remember too that Title V doesn't have a setback to that
Right.
either, so we are providing a.
So let's say 200 feet unless,
So 4 feet vertically or 200 feet horizontally, whichever is less. Lesser.
Right, then say.
now does that put in question any of the other,
No, so it's only for flooding on the coast. So if you're on the beach, the 200 feet may apply.
Right.
If you're on a cliff, the 4 feet's probably gonna apply.
Right.
That's so,
So you're about 4 feet.
yeah, so if you're 4 feet vertically, so if you're,
You don't need the variance.
right, you don't need to come.
It's like a vertical elevation. I mean, it's elevation.
but is it 4 feet from bottom of bed to groundwater?
No, from the elevation of flooding,
Yeah, from the flood zone elevation.
right?
And I'm sorry, there's a lot of flood zones too, that don't have an elevation, so. we'll have
So
to-
then it would
we'll
just
have-
be the
we'll have to-
horizontal or. And then they can come.
Yeah,
It- it's tough that they have to come back here for it, but
I guess,
it's gonna minimize some of them.
yeah, you could look at whatever elevations on the plan and
Right.
where it, although with the zone As, you would just digitize them on your design plan with whatever elevation
Right.
they're at, so you can assume an elevation, I suppose, but.
Yeah, no, that's,
I'm sorry, so can you guys just help me with language here? 200 feet or 4 feet from elevation of flooding,
From the bottom of the septic system, right?
and you just added a comment that we need to attend to, which is that we also want to qualify that they have to put this on their plan now from a design plan standpoint, right?
that's. Yeah, so they have to call out the zone. That AE is a resource area or zone A.
And is that enough then? Did they now have to add the elevation?
Well,
Where
that's-
they might have not had to before? Did they have to add the elevation at zone A?
So the zone AE would be an elevation, the zone A would just show up on the plan. That's a-
So-
that's a-
So the zone A, zone AE are areas that FEMA's have studied, and they have a specific elevation, known flood elevation,
Yep.
but the zone A is just approximate. So it doesn't have an elevation, and typically what engineers will do is just digitize it on their surveyed plan of the lot. And so it wouldn't have an elevation to say be 4 feet above that specifically, so it would have to be inferred from that digitizing and looking at the plan.
Okay, so
Right.
typically they do or they must, because because
So-
again, if they must, then we
But if this
wanna,
is for coastal resource areas only, because we're gonna hold 100 feet. On the freshwater, so for coastal resource areas only, most of those I think are either AEs or VEs.
Right.
So,
Yeah, most of them,
so,
it's true.
I don't know
You're
that,
saying A's have an elevation.
yeah, anything with an E suffix has an elevation.
Does this apply to VEs as well? Or,
Um,
No, where it's specified in that.
it would, if you're in a velocity zone, so this is where it's gonna get really messy is when the new regs come out. If you're in a velocity zone, you're gonna have to come here.
You don't wanna do anything in a velocity zone.
Yes, and the new wetland regs are
yeah, it's gonna,
gonna be,
alright, so,
When are they coming out?
they were supposed to come out this summer.
so,
And there's,
2
and
summers
there's
from
also
now.
supposed to be some, things for land subject to coastal storm fluid.
Oh, yeah, no, it's,
Yeah,
if your house gets destroyed in a storm now, you're not gonna be allowed to rebuild with the land subject to coastal storm
Mhm.
regulations. It's, but they received a slew of comments,
right.
and now I'm hearing possibly next summer at this point now. It's supposed
Well, I
to-
heard that last summer.
Yes, well, there's supposed to be a new revision to.
Okay, so what we're doing now makes sense.
Yes.
Yes, so,
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
We're getting ahead of
I'm
the
coming through it. So,
Yeah.
Like, we've done that before.
alright, does that language look okay?
yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
And I do think one other discussion point, and maybe Dave, you're more most qualified here to talk about it, but is that we include, coastal dunes and, barrier beaches in our resource areas. And, from a Title V perspective, we're just looking at what the soil is, right? It's just sand. Really those areas are protected under the Wetlands Protection Act, and the functions of those areas are really more of a conservation thing. I
so you're
agree.
saying it's out of our jurisdiction at some level?
I agree that it's important, and I know the nitrogen sensitive stuff that you guys added is important here, but. I think it's a little, maybe. A bit of an overreach when. We're only like looking at the soil and like really the work in those resource areas is really only subject to. The performance standards in the act and how conservation wants to handle it.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Although,
So I'm saying, why are we requiring a variance from 200 feet to those resource areas?
Because that helps protect our public health, because, there are food products with fisheries
Exactly.
and shellfish and things like that. And that's where the nexus is, as opposed to freshwater. That's why we were under consent decree.
Yes. Old enough to.
Anything here? Should I keep rolling?
yeah, we went down to one set of, hard copies from 2. That was trying to save some paper.
This is one set of hard copies, but we also have requirements for digital copies and a lot of other
Yeah.
documentation, but we don't have that in here. Do we need to add in
That
all
goes into the
requirements?
actual section 5 plan.
Okay, so
requirements,
that's
so,
probably, okay.
yeah. Let's see, some
Sorry, John.
clarity that sometimes Board of Health approval on tight tanks,
Isn't that Title V?
yes. And we get into the quorum of the Board of Health being part of the Septic Review Subcommittee as well, because Septic Review Subcommittee sometimes has a quorum of.
Even if the septic review subcommittee has a quorum and votes to approve, it must be confirmed at a meeting with the Board of Health.
Correct. So it's just kind of
That's the
adding,
last possible choice,
yes,
and that's in Title V.
yes.
So does it need to be in this regulation?
I think this is pushing you to the full board of, well, no, because it says quorum of the Board of Health.
Yeah.
So, yeah, originally I had it as the
You could
Board of
strike-
Health, so it took an actual Board of Health hearing
Exactly. So
instead
you
of
can
a,
strike this.
Yeah, so I guess we can strike
It's
that.
not
Well,
local
just
regulation.
so you all are fine saying that people can come in and propose to this committee, the use of a tight tank and.
Well, it's only when there's a quorum present,
Right,
so.
But even if this board were then to approve the idea, it has to go to the full Board of Health in order to be heard and approved.
Right.
we
So
have a
it's
quorum,
redundant coming
we have a
here.
quorum in this,
But it's not advertised as a meeting of the Board of Health.
Could they?
That is true,
what?
so I think that runs into some of the issues here. If you have a Title V variance, it can't be approved
That's right.
in this
Oh.
subcommittee, even if you have a quorum of the Board of Health, unless you advertise the Septic Review Subcommittee and Board of Health joint meeting.
Exactly.
Okay,
So that's,
so we'll add that to our
But-
Title 5 form,
Legal
our
process.
variance form for sure.
Initially, even if the Board of Health approved a tight tank, it had to go to DEP in Boston to be approved. That's no longer the case.
Right.
So at least the decision of the full Board of
Yeah.
Health makes
But-
that decision.
but yeah, tight tank is always the last option. We kind of had this discussion that,
Yeah.
you know,
So
Some
you're saying that
treatment's
it's not
always better than
required to
none.
have in here because it's already in Title 5, that's your
Exactly.
point?
Yeah, so it shouldn't be part of Gloucester regulation.
All right, does everybody agree we can strike?
Yeah.
Okay, hearing no nays. Alrighty,
for septic system upgrades. There's,
yes, that's an obvious one, sorry, that's my ignorant questions are in here as well, I saw it, I apologize.
Yeah, I have wording changes for that.
And Thor, you had a question on this one, I'm highlighting your question right now as well, why would someone propose an STU if hearing request to reduce the required setback is not required?
Septic system upgrade is defined by Title V review. The septic review subcommittee comprised of a forum with Board of Health will occur. Period. No public hearing of the Board of Health will be required unless requested by subcommittee, et cetera.
yeah, so it's requested by the subcommittee. So if you don't feel comfortable approving the relief here, it just reserves your right to refer it to the whole board. That was the thought process behind that. It was to give you
Yeah,
some
Because
level of.
there are other members of the Board of Health who were not here who may have strong opinions.
Right, so if you get something that's, and I can't think of something, but off the top of my head, but if you get something that the members here just don't feel like it should be approved at a subcommittee, it needs to hear the full.
Even with the board.
You have the right to refer it.
Exactly.
That's all that was looking to do.
So you're saying that this is a ridiculous statement because, is that what you're saying? Like, why would someone propose an STU if a hearing is not required?
I don't remember what the.
And then, so this one is, if no public hearing is required for reasons specified in Title V, an application which incorporates advanced secondary treatment is automatically approved. So if you're, yeah, so if you don't have to go to a public hearing and you need local upgrade relief and you provide advanced.
All of our meetings are public hearings and they're posted.
Correct.
I think you're saying if there are local upgrade approvals or
And,
alternative design standards.
but they provide secondary treatment,
Right.
then it can go through just through the. Yes.
So should it say no public hearing versus if?
But,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
yeah, so you don't have to advertise it or anything. You can just come here and say, hey, we came to the meeting.
Well, actually, those things normally would be handled within the department.
Yes.
They wouldn't come to septic review.
So that is something that you all have decided in past meetings, but it's not necessarily, has never been written. So some people did and some people didn't.
Yeah,
So we need
the
to,
Title V sanitarium is the person who would approve it.
Yeah, so that's,
I'm just saying that you all said that, but it was never in our
I
regulations
see.
before. So this is where we would be enacting that. Does that make sense?
Yep. So
And then
it's,
we just have to make sure this language is
Yeah.
appropriate.
and we can do it, the board can do it either way. Title V is pretty vague on it. Some
Yeah,
towns let
exactly.
staff approve local upgrade
Yeah.
approvals. Some towns, the boards want to see them. So it's not, it doesn't, I don't think that has to be
yeah, and then,
codified.
yeah, just kind of giving them the out that. Hey, you can come here and roll the dice, or you can just put a secondary treatment unit in and
Right.
you're approved.
Then I'm not sure the sentence is saying the right thing then, because that's not
The
what.
septic
you said.
system upgrades is defined in Title V.
No, the sentence I've highlighted.
If no public hearing is required for reasons specified in Title V, so There are some items that don't require,
But we're not accomplishing what you just said is my point. What you just said is that if you are. What you just said was if you are using an approved DEP system, you don't need to come for approval, correct?
if you're using a secondary treatment, then, right, you don't need to get
For upgrades.
subcommittee approval.
So.
So there are some things that in your regs before that require subcommittee approval that did not require a public hearing from Title V.
Right,
Yes.
So,
and then you all voted at some point in time to say the sanitarian can make that choice.
and that's basically saying that there is no choice to be made if you provide
So
secondary.
you're saying if
treatment.
no public hearing is required per Title V,
Right.
for reasons specified in Title V, or in these regulations, the application which incorporates a DEP approved will be automatically approved by the health department? Or will be approved at the discretion of the health department, or will
It's
be
just
automatically
automatic,
approved?
so,
I don't like the word automatic.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah,
I remember when we had this discussion, and Thor and I agreed that sometimes local upgrade approvals, when they're done by the sanitarian, don't necessarily take into account maximum feasible, upgrade. Because there may be times when you can mount a system and not necessarily have to take the reduction, you know,
Right.
to season high groundwater, things like that, so.
You want to hear about it.
In some instances, we may want to hear about that, you know, if they're local upgrade approvals.
Okay.
Because sometimes the sanitarian, there's a whole menu of things that you can do under a local upgrade approval. And some of these things don't allow you, don't coincide with maximum feasible compliance. So, you know, we cautioned that, you know, when we had the discussion with Leslie.
Okay, so now we're gonna, so Thor, I think you have something you want to say as
Yeah,
well?
look, it's local upgrade approvals, it's like, it is like, it's like an art too, like you'll have to get used to like what's appropriate and what's not. And it depends, and there are situations where people will submit plans to you that they may not have to Leslie, because they, you know, think they can try something and
So then do we want to keep it coming before the board?
Maybe for the time being, or.
Or at the discretion, Title V sanitary.
So except,
I think, yeah, like,
I mean, I
if
think
if it's a silly one, like, I don't know, like they can't move the field's 15 feet to a foundation, and there's clearly no
Right, yeah.
other option, like, we don't need to see that,
Exactly.
you know, but. If they want a 2-foot groundwater reduction and they're not proposing a secondary treatment unit, that's one that probably shouldn't be,
right, so I think that was,
but people try to do that, you know, like.
right, I think that's saying that if you want that approval through him, you need to come in with the secondary treatment.
Mhm.
So I want that local upgrade approval through the sanitarian. I'm only getting it if I add secondary treatment.
But they could also be asking for a reduction in the size of the field, or
So,
as well as,
so, yeah, I've always interpreted you get one or the other.
Right, right. But you
but
can
you have to
insist-
write whatever we want to.
right, but you can also have a system with 40% reduction. So on the size of it, and a reduction to seasoning groundwater, and it could be in a sensitive area.
Right, in that case, you definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that's, so I think we can strike that.
Wait, that's not what everybody's saying.
Oh.
At all. You mean strike this out so that we would still.
So that it
come
just
for-
still comes to the subcommittee.
Okay. Is that what we're saying?
That slows things down.
But it does slow things down, but, you know, I'm worried about, you know, the abuse, you know, that there are some designers who will try to challenge him because he's new to the job. And every time, you know, a new sanitarian comes in, they try to push the envelope a little bit.
So given
True.
the newness of the role, you're saying, let's leave this as is, and then we can, you know.
This high turnover rate.
Yeah.
That's,
No, that's
Yeah,
not.
and
Not
then,
gonna happen.
and then I think we'll get to a point where you'll be more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this language here then. So are you fine with 4.4 now as it reads?
No.
Oh.
so the purpose of 4.5, from my perspective, this is the only change I made.
No, I'm still on 4.4, Joe, I think.
4.4,
Fred, you said you weren't happy.
No, 4.5, we're at.
Um,
We were just on, we were just
We're on
talking about
4.4.
4.4.
Oh, you brought back. But Joe, go.
So
well, with regard 4.5. I don't want, given the likely increase in water tables. That if people want to be within sensitive areas or their leach field. That they not be able to put in a Presby system, except in some extraordinary circumstance that I can't imagine, actually.
Exactly.
So that's what this advanced secondary treatment is
Yes,
meant to do.
exactly.
So you don't view a Presby system as advanced secondary treatment?
DEBW.
No,
It does,
it's
but-
not secondary treatment. All the
It's
treatment is
just-
in the leach field.
Yeah.
Right, it's advanced treatment, it's not advanced second, so like it's not on par with like the Piranha system we saw.
Waterloo
The
biofilter.
Waterloo biofilter.
So in the, I mean, I guess we can talk about the soft line, but in the case of the ones we just approved, would it have been a better idea to ask for something other than a Presby system?
No, not necessarily.
No, that
That's
one
right in
was
the law.
pretty
Yeah.
standard.
There was no wetlands involved, there was no coastal things
Exactly.
involved, it was
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Leslie spoke really eloquently in favor of the Presby and changed my mind. Well, it's very appropriate when it's used.
I like,
Yeah,
yeah, no, that's,
we used to be very, very down on it, and my opinions changed dramatically.
Well, initially, there was a lot of problems with it.
Okay.
And we had a lot of failures here.
So what were
They
you
made
concerned about
adjustments.
the water table with specifically the Presby system? Why is that?
Well, I mean, the Presby system relies on the leach field to do all the
Yeah,
work,
okay,
right?
I gotcha. Because that's where the treatment's happening. So
Yeah,
the water
I'd
table
like
comes
to
up
be-
into the
come
leach field.
close to having
We're losing our
drinkable
treatment.
water
Yeah, and I-
coming out of the system.
I think that's the one that has if you read the remedial use approval, you can take the reduction to the groundwater or the reduction to the field, but not both.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
And that makes sense for that. So,
Just really quickly, Fred, I don't know, are you looking at your older copy because we've added things? So 4.4 is now talking about upgrades as defined in Title V. Right? So again, the
Yes.
numbers might have moved a little bit if you're not looking at,
I'm looking at both.
oh, you are, okay, good.
Thank you.
And Joe, the line I struck is the one you wanted me to keep in some form, because I was just getting rid of this one.
I think
And,
that we did decide to get rid of that.
but this
line.
was the point that Joe was just making that. And I think I guess I'll ask how should we protect, based on what Joe just said? Because we were just gonna get rid of this whole phrase that had that protection in it.
Reasons specified in Title V.
I'm a little lost.
Will be automatically, cannot have them. Joe's right. It can't be automatically approved because the technology changes.
So do you want me to say something like unless advanced secondary treatment has been provided? Is this one we agreed, we don't want to have automatic approval anymore?
if no hearing is required for the full Board of Health,
Right.
Would it make sense to just have a local upgrade approval section? I don't know.
yeah, I was starting to think about that as we went through some of the local upgrades as to and kind of just define what makes sense for local upgrades here in Gloucester, what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with.
Okay, so we'll take that under advisement just for the sake of us moving on.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're at 4.5, which I don't think is,
Existence for that. Yeah, same numbers.
So
Well, as we kind of move.
as we
delete
change
things
things,
and
it's
it
gonna
gets
change.
changed.
Yeah,
So she's deleted section.
septic review subcommittee has at least two members. When
That's
there's
all.
3 people here, it doesn't have to go to the Board of Health anymore, because all the recommendations used to go to the full board and voted on. If it doesn't require full Board of Health approval, so it's basically how you're operating currently.
Yeah, but they're within that sentence. You need to reiterate that decisions having to do with variances to Title V must go back to the board.
Yes.
And the local variances
Yeah.
too, correct?
Good.
Local variances have to go
They can't be approved here, they have to go to the Board of Health.
Or I'm sorry, no, they can't be approved.
But if there's no quorum.
If there's no
Septic
quorum, they have,
Subcommittee
right.
can meet without a quorum. They therefore
Gotcha.
can do advisory and everything then gets confirmed to the next Board of Health meeting.
Yeah, this is one of the ones we thought about taking out, but it's not always gonna be 3 Board of Health members here, so you have to be fluid and cover all.
So, you know, under no circumstance can SRC give approval for relief for terms stated in Title V,
Right.
right? And Gail, what's her name, was saying that these have to go to the DEP. Claire Golden. Yeah, if we're gonna,
Claire Golden, she's still there?
Claire, yeah.
Yep.
So there.
No kidding.
That's where you go for clarification.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's actually offered to come in and review these when we have them after this round. And offer some
That's
awesome.
yeah.
Boy.
Okay, I'm just gonna move on here, but we'll add that in.
Just the fees need to be paid, second revision in that section, which keeps changing. Basically says that to reset the timeline, if you've had to submit more than twice, the plan's considered rejected and it's
Yes.
a new application. That way, that timeline starts over
Quick five day.
for those people who can't. kind of,
Do we have our fee structure, is that dependent on the protocol of how the city decides fees for services or because we're Board of Health?
We have a
Whatever Board of Health
45-day
is
window by
independent.
ordinance to
Can we do
respond.
it independently though? Can the Board of Health?
No, we
fees
can't
have to
change
go
our
to-
45, that, we can't change
Our
that.
fees.
We can't change our fees without approval from the city council,
Okay,
but
I want to make sure.
this has already been in place where we charge for every other.
Yeah,
But I think what's important is that we also want to stop the clock. So if you haven't given us a complete application, we do a plan review and it's sloppy work.
yeah.
The clock doesn't start until we have a complete plan that has
If
all.
you remember, I commented, there were 9 errors.
Well, there's like been 50 in some of them, so like there's wide ranges of quality in terms of what were submitted.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and Leslie would always say this, it's an impossibility to get such garbage and then turn it around in 45 days.
Right.
So we wanna, and Suzanne Egan will look at this as well, but we'd like to propose that the window, the time doesn't start clicking until we accept it as a complete application. So that the designers will feel, you know, an obligation to deliver us finished goods for review rather than partially finished goods.
So office time, something.
I think it's important to say that it's not a complete application.
Should we reference the checklist
Idea.
Good idea.
as outlined by
Yeah.
this list?
Also got applications for boilerplate that has nothing to do with what we're asking for. Fills it for small print.
Like you.
So
It's smoke.
I can bounce through the next one, which is easy.
Sorry.
That is the same thing we've always been doing. If you have a IA system, you submit the DEP approval, just so we have it on file.
Mhm.
The next section is new, and it deals with variances for setback from a system to a drinking water well. I think we wanted to add, you know, the thought was to add some more teeth. So we have our own form. We don't use the Form 9A, but I think anytime you get into potential for,
This is 4.9 on the forms we're looking at now.
so if you get into the potential that you're varying from Title V on the well setbacks, the Form 9A should be part of the application. So when you're getting into this well setback, granted, it's 100 on Title V, it's 150 here. And we want the engineer, a qualified representative, to present it. We don't want homeowners coming in. All the wells within 150 feet need to be notified. Let's see. And then standing water analysis for the existing wells need to be provided. And that's just to set a baseline. So if there is a problem in the future, we have something in our files that say these were all tested and yeah, they never had people call a form or. And then the deed restriction, which is,
And you're fine getting rid of copper, iron and lead.
yeah, I
It
mean,
doesn't really,
it's not huge. It's,
they're not really created by,
it can be from if someone's disposing of caustics, but again,
oh,
it's not a huge.
so should we leave it in or leave it out? Do you guys want us to?
I think you should remove those, you know.
Yeah.
When you get a Title V of well inspection, at $95 at Biomarine, it doesn't include those.
Yeah, no, that's
This
fine.
way it would be, you know, less expensive to, you know, with property owners and everybody else, and I don't think the cost would warrant.
Yeah.
You know, putting that in.
And yeah, coliform ammonia, nitrate. That'll tell you if it's a septic issue.
Right.
What's the deed restriction piece of it, Tony, that you were?
Noting that they have a,
Blasted.
basically just saying that they have a system within 150 feet of public well.
Okay,
Just to-
you're just saying if required, it may be required?
Yeah.
You're proposing this, okay.
It's required?
That's.
No,
maybe-
no, I was just saying, it was case, it sounded like a case by case,
Yeah.
like if it's a hundred, yeah.
No wells
Yeah,
around. Or if they-
and I think that's more-
Property owners.
Okay, that's fine.
That's just so that if someone buys the house, they know that
Yeah.
the system was installed
Or if
within
there's
a.
any
Yeah,
wells
and it's
that-
more-
yeah, that's a good idea.
Area,
Yeah.
the fire department.
Just so it's on record with
Notify
the.
everybody.
Yeah,
So why is it May then?
well, that's a fairly unique thing, I don't, you know,
So, I think if it's in violation of the Title V
Yeah, maybe.
setbacks, then you'd require it if it's a local, so if they're at 149 feet,
right,
you're not gonna make them do a deed restriction. If they're, you know, at 70 feet, then you'll probably wanna have a deed restriction because
But why
that's.
the variability there?
Cause our setbacks are 150 and Title V is 100.
Oh,
So,
So if you want, we wanna clarify it so that it's not up to the agent, we could just say that if you're with,
well,
you
it'd be
know,
up to the,
below 100 feet.
it'd be up to this board or the full board of health.
Yeah, I guess
Because
that's true.
that's a variance request,
and it would be on the well owner's property?
yes.
Okay,
so what are you trying to accomplish with this statement? A deed restriction may be required if under 100 feet? No, that would
So, yeah, so if
be
you're.
approved?
We want something at the registry of deeds, so if you go and buy a house, you know that that well is located, you know, close to a septic system.
Okay,
I think I think the Gloucester local ordinance, you don't need to go that far. I think if you're below the Title V,
so are you objecting to the distance of 150 feet? Is there a reason we're 150 feet, not 100 feet?
I think given the soil conditions in Gloucester, 150 feet makes sense in some areas.
Okay.
that's what we've been.
Yeah, that's just, you know,
Okay, so then why since those soil conditions exist, why wouldn't you just make a deed restriction required? I mean. Just to keep it simple.
yeah, I guess you can make it,
It is a little awkward too, like imagine if someone's putting, like, who's gonna pay for it, like it's another property that's not related to the septic system repair. That's just a little,
yeah, I think it's
I like,
It's kind of left to just be, when it's at the board, if this is an issue and it's very close.
Right.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna make sure it's on
I mean,
record.
since you're attaching the deed restriction to the people not
We were doing the work, right?
doing the work, you're potentially lowering the value of their property.
That's a good
And they
point,
may
yeah, so-
object to having a deed
it's a
restriction.
good point.
Yeah,
So I would stick with the Title V violation.
Yes. We stick with the Title V, we just have it be up to the board basically to make the decision, so the May.
I think it should be May personally and case by case basis, but
Well, if
So-
you guys wanna take that on, that's,
I mean, or
I
we can
don't
just
really
strike
actually.
it.
that's what we do now.
But we don't do that. No,
We'll do-
no,
Well, we're doing well testing in like for 50 Hilltop, right? That's not the same.
but we've never done a deed recording for a
No.
property.
No.
Could the deed restriction make a distinction between if it was like, if it said it's within the setback of the local Board of Health, or it's within the setback of the Title V Board of Health, so it made a difference so that any property buyer who's going to buy that realizes what type of a property that they're purchasing.
Well, in the case of 50 Hilltop, that means that, yeah, we'd have 5 deed restrictions, right?
So,
Yeah, yes,
That would have had to been issued.
Yeah, exactly.
Which means-
Which
Like-
means that like,
And actually, maybe the deed restriction
We shouldn't do.
goes to the
yeah, if,
the property owner of
bring
the
it up on-
system that I am aware that I have a septic system that is located within X amount of feet of a private drinking water well and may require immediate upgrade or abandonment.
If that's the nature of the deed.
I think that's
then-
probably a better way to
Yeah,
handle it.
keep it on the property.
Keep it on the property owner.
Property, right.
So you buy it, you know you have a septic system that's within 100 feet, their wells start testing.
Right.
Bad, you know that you might have to replace your system, even though it
Right.
meets Title
yeah, cause
V.
then it's not gonna, yeah, cause
Yeah.
every neighbor is gonna be up in arms if all of a sudden they've got deed restrictions.
Yeah,
No,
so
no,
this
but
is,
this should be on the property.
yeah,
Like, you
And that
know,
way-
hearing and say, I-
That's true, they
I
might show up to the
support this.
hearing.
Exactly.
yeah, because that wouldn't come in, so you could pass Title V.
Yep.
In theory. Go buy a house, think your system's fine, and then find out that your neighbor's got. Intrusion into their well,
Mhm.
and then the Board of Health says you have to abandon your system.
Right, but this should be on the subject property.
Yeah, so it's only on the subject property.
How does this?
Yeah, and the neighbors could be informed that.
Right, well, yeah, they have to be notified directly if
No,
they're
but
the
they,
affected
they
well.
should
but-
be aware that, potentially at least.
Yeah, so this is
there's a
kind
deed
of,
restriction. So there's a certain level of responsibility if all of a sudden their
Maybe
well
deed
is
restriction for the-
becoming.
Yeah, just say
contaminated.
maybe,
They know
yeah.
who to go to.
I like
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, we used that to ask the petitioner to test the neighboring wells
No, no,
at
right,
their expense.
but, yeah, initially, but they're not gonna do that.
We just had a case that we did this for.
Yes,
We were testing the neighbors' wells.
That's right.
yep.
Before and
Yeah,
after.
they'll-
So how is that related to what we're talking about?
Well, in the future, he would have to have a deed restriction on his property saying he understands his obligation to care for the system, and it may have to cease and desist if he
He
finds
doesn't have that
corruption.
now.
He doesn't know.
he doesn't
So
know.
they, if you have an alternative system, you still have a deed recording noting that you have an alternative system. But I don't believe it wouldn't speak to the well.
Right, so this
issue.
is,
He doesn't
So in
have an
that
alternative
scenario,
system.
would he then have to go to a tight tank?
Yeah,
that's.
or you have to
yeah,
fix
he
the
would-
system with something fancier.
Or
Yeah.
tie into the sewer immediately if it's
That's the
available.
case, but doesn't have any nature mitigating anything.
Right, yeah, so he doesn't have any nature.
Yeah, so, yeah, in that case, he doesn't have an IA deed
Doesn't have
restriction.
anything.
He would have to have a deed restriction saying that, hey, you start affecting these wells.
What about if there's water in the street and the person still prefers to have a well? Could that force them to connect the end of the water into the street?
You can't make a butter do anything.
You can't.
Yeah.
There's a.
Private well, if you wanna poison yourself, you
Water.
can do that.
Well, I wasn't gonna say that, but that's what we used to say.
There's a grudge well in Waterman. A guy put a well in, so the abutting property can't be developed,
That was, yeah, spike wells used to be
right?
pretty popular.
Yeah. It's still there. I looked at it last week.
That regulation since changed, but yeah, people used to put wells on property lines and then the other thing, they used to call them spike strips, so you couldn't develop your land. They would put like a little small 5-foot wide strip so you couldn't tie into the road you just built. And they've outlawed those since too.
So is that language okay? A deed restriction for the subject property may be required, which will need notarization recording at the Northern Essex Registry of Deeds.
Yep.
No desire to qualify if Title V, like if exceeding Title V or.
No, I think you just leave the discretion with the board.
Okay.
I'll just mark it. We struck this, I believe, or we were talking about striking this.
Which one?
This was for a water testing fee for 3 years of well testing for each affected well, just the maintaining an escrow account and handling it with the level of staffing that the health department has, it's just too much.
Wait, I don't know that staffing should be a reason to not protect health. So how we choose to enforce it, if that's an open issue, but it is the intent here is to say that the subject would have to take on the cost of
Yeah,
testing any abutting well.
they would have to give you the fee for 3 years and put it, and then you'd have to administer an escrow account.
It's complicated.
No,
Yeah,
you
it's-
can have them hold the escrow account. We don't have to administer it. They just have to have proof of having one.
And we could condition any approval to that level too, and you know, have it under and, you know, the ability to force, you know, compliance with that approval, so
Malik,
You
you
know,
know,
I-
4.88.
I don't think giving, like, having an escrow
Yeah,
account
it's-
doesn't guarantee their.
It's just because
That was
some
my point,
sections are
like,
getting deleted,
you know.
and so they shift it up.
So I think what this is meant to do is to make sure that it would happen. And an escrow account sort of ensures that it's gonna happen, because the money's set aside, right?
Yes.
They still need to sample, we still need to sample,
And
and that's, so,
Like in 50 Hilltop, is there an escrow account for that?
Yes.
oh,
No,
it's-
they sent us money and we tested and we have the money there, and then they have to send us money again for the next round of tests.
oh, well.
And then the next round of tests, there's 3 rounds of
Okay.
tests. So what are you all recommending here? How do you protect the wells of somebody who could have failure? How do you know that what you've given a variance to grant will not be contaminating a well? How do you track it? How do you know that the decision will not harm the health of the people around it?
One of the things that I think was discussed is that perhaps people with private drinking water wells have their wells tested at least once a year, and that may be in the future, but that may be the best way to have that done. Whether it be every year, every 2 years, or something, but on a regular basis. If nothing else, even if people aren't compliant, it will bring it to their attention
Yeah.
that, you know, that this is an issue. And you can't just
a
figure it out.
recommendation.
So I think what he's saying is that if I was a homeowner and I tested my well and I found it to be contaminated, I would bring it before the Board of Health. And then it would be our obligation to figure out that source of contamination, right? To be like, what wells are,
No, if it's a private well, no.
but if has a septic system abutting, you don't think we'd go test that septic system?
I think we would,
Yeah.
yes.
I think we'd ask for it to have
Ethical
that
thing to do.
inspection.
That's,
So this is
I think
designed
that's
to
an
like,
improvement. We didn't used to think that.
Do we want
What
to
happens on your lawn happens on your lawn,
stipulate
but
that
if it goes
these are
over to somebody
potable-
else's lawn.
Right.
potable water, not
Yes.
water in the lawn?
Lewis, I'd rather used to say private wells are private wells.
Just for wells, but.
I think he was mistaken.
Yeah,
yeah, so if we granted relief to allow a septic system within 150 feet of the well, part of that would be requiring you to pony up for testing of those abutting wells that are affected for 3 years. And then if one of those had a spike in fecal coliform or something, we could expand it to 5 years.
Wow.
I guess.
I mean, how often does this come up? Or is this just because of 50
Gonna come up
Hilltop?
No,
in
it's come up a couple times.
Yeah.
It's
It's a common variance.
Well, there are just certain areas, it used to be overlooked, but now water's gone to overlook. It used to be Rust Island, but now some water's gone to Rust Island,
Yeah.
and there's some areas of Bray Street, you know, where it's an issue.
Hilltop.
Used to be
And
all of them.
Hilltop, right, you know, and in some areas on Concord Street.
Yeah.
And some areas on Atlantic Street, but now water's gone, so those areas are getting smaller, you know, where this
Gotcha.
happened.
And there wasn't always the regulation that if you were on well and septic, you had to have 10,000 square feet per bedroom. A lot area, so you had some 20,000 square foot lots that had a well and a septic, and now, you know, your system's failing and you really don't have much separation, and you have no choice but to stay with the 150 feet.
Areas like Overlook and Rust Island, where there's very little soil, it was a huge issue.
So I mean, if the health department feels comfortable administering the escrows and you do it, I don't see.
Why do we have to administer the escrow? But they could just have their lawyer administer the escrow. It'd just be part of the terms of like what they're doing. We don't have to administer it.
I don't think it's a good idea.
No, I don't think we have to administer. We just have to require that they set that up and show proof of it.
Right.
We don't administer it. Like that would mean us managing the dollars in it. That would just not be a good idea.
That's enforcement of an HOA.
Right. So that's how I just don't know how you get the test on someone else's.
Well, we don't, we talk about this. We also say a standard water analysis, including a minimum total call form for all affected wells must be performed.
Prior, so that's giving you your baseline.
Okay, so but we're going on people's property then to do that.
So, well, they're gonna have to arrange for it. It's very difficult to put your well with it.
You say must be offered to each affected well?
I mean, I think if you have an abutter that is adamantly against putting a well into their setback, especially for Title V, I think it's a hard variance to overcome.
So
Because it would have to go to DEP afterwards, and DEP is not gonna go against the well owner. So this is really within 50 to 100 feet. I mean, yeah,
so you're saying like,
yeah, so maybe it should be, shall be offered to the abutters.
Much better.
Yeah. So in that other one above, it should be, shall be offered to the,
Yes.
so it's the well
shall,
owner.
must be offered to the abutters for each effect,
To the well owner, to the,
offered to the abutting well owners and required for the on-site well.
And is the
and
collection,
what, sorry, just one second,
And required.
and what,
And required for on-site,
so a zone or their own,
wells, yeah.
okay,
is this saying that the health department is conducting the test?
no,
No,
No.
ordering
So the
acceptable.
money's being set aside and needs to be done annually. However, we can't force you as an abutter to allow us to test your water. However, the money needs to be there and it needs to be offered to you. If you choose that you don't want someone on your property, you don't want your well tested, I mean,
Yep.
it's not the best choice, but
Private well.
it's America, you have the right to.
right,
You don't have to.
It's good working.
Yeah, it's so we're just saying that, you know, again, it needs to be offered.
Yes.
we can wordsmith this one, so, because right now the
Yeah.
syntax is all crazy.
Yeah, no, that's but
So,
but the goal is
Oh, yeah,
just
no,
that
it's that, it's both sections.
offered, not required. It's
Right.
required on your well.
Yeah.
Because you're, you know, you have control over it.
Right. The abutter has rights.
Say no, thank you.
Yes, I know.
We're looking out for your interest, but we can't force you to.
That's right.
Okay,
My land.
alrighty,
So
Section 5.
included on plans,
so,
let's add
yeah,
to that where it says the location and log of each step,
What number are you at?
preparation of plans and specifications.
Yep.
Tony, there's here's a new section to codify what we currently request on plans, so. Anybody have an objection to adding this new section?
so
Just want to check. Okay,
we're also gonna require that abandoned holes be shown, because I think it does add some context. If you
where are
if you
you?
hit ledge here, you hit ledge here, and
I don't
They
think
should
anywhere,
you can chase it down.
I don't think anywhere in here you asked for the address of the property.
No, we do. We saw that,
Where?
Fred. We have it there.
5.1.
5.14 address of the property.
5.1
The number
Look on the
is probably-
screenshot.
The lot number of the
These ones you
property,
taken from
No, so look up
Title
here,
V?
Fred.
Above it.
the name and
No,
address of the owner. of
That's
the
why
property.
address.
And then
wasn't
right
on there.
below it.
That was my recommendation.
No.
Oh, address of the property. I think we added it in.
Yeah, we
Maybe
added
it's
it.
not on the copy.
Yeah, we got it.
I got
We
it.
did add it
Is it
in.
there? Wait, I'm sorry. I don't know.
On the test pit part up above,
What, can you just,
5.1.2. All logs as well as percolation tests must be accompanied by the following. Survey, we add for ground surface elevation, survey location and ground survey.
grants, where, here?
So right before ground.
Yep.
Survey location. And ground surface elevation at the top of each gate.
And, is this, where do we have the location log of each hole that was abandoned due to refusal? Or other, okay,
Yeah, so
that's
that's
to be, right.
provided, and then,
So one of the things that, I'm just in my soil evaluator class, I have to tell you, it's such exciting stuff, but they were talking about, the inspector shall go on, all, you know, the inspector should go through the whole dug. But I think in our regulations, it said that the hole must be dug, prior to the
So
inspector arriving,
we have a
so.
section above that, that says that we can refuse that.
Refuse what?
That, at the health department's request, we can be present to witness.
So if we have a tricky area,
Right.
okay,
So,
I always wanted them to dig the hole, you know, when it was there, in case it was compact. It really would tell you, and then if you look at what they're pushing over, it's like, because they can,
you wanna watch it, right?
I wanna watch
Yeah,
everything from
that's
the
what I was
beginning all the way
thinking
through.
Yeah, I think watching it's a good idea.
You've been hurt before, haven't you?
Yes, can you help me?
No.
So then where in our regulations do we say they have to pre-dig the hole? And should we just get rid of it?
we don't say that they have to, it just says.
Oh, maybe
that-
somebody, somewhere it was in,
Uh,
maybe it's in Title V.
Yeah, in the interest of time, you know, I agree that you're on the right path.
Yeah. I think somewhere I saw it, but
It was
I can-
in
I can
circulation testing.
I mean, I think if we wanna go out from the start, we can go out from the start. Typically, we go out when it's.
I just wanna be
there's-
Oh, it
sure.
says right here.
It's only in the interest of time, because
Oh,
Okay.
3.6, Gloucester Health Department designee shall witness all soil testing that is to be used for siting a new system or repair. At the health department's request, test pits will not be dug until an inspector is present.
Okay, so that protects if you have a tricky one.
Yeah.
Right, that you can make sure you're watching. Okay,
but I think that's really like generally probably new construction, not like
Right.
upgrades.
If you're on Coffin's Beach, you know, may not be necessary, but.
Right.
So it gives you the discretion. You know, I think early on, you probably want to go to all of them, and get an idea of what the soils.
Yeah,
And then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, there's sometimes you've. You know, you've dug holes on either side of the property and you know exactly what you're gonna find and, yeah, okay, you can open it up and I'll be there.
okay, so this one was actually from Dan and I speaking, trying to understand some of his comments, 5.1.8. So we have some recommended adding in bedroom easements and other elements impacting subsurface conditions. So that we can see that they are putting on their plan if there is any deed restrictions that we need to know about, the requirement in there.
It just, and a lot of this stuff is trying to help. Speed up the reviews. So,
And also keep them honest, right, to, you know, make sure that we're, okay,
well, I mean, a lot of that stuff comes out of our own. Files, so we pull the file and find out that there's a 3-bedroom deed restriction and, you know, but if they just called it out for us on the plan, it makes things a lot easier. So then
I'm just getting rid of
some
these.
floor elevations and that sort of thing, because when you try and evaluate a waiver request for distance to a house, knowing what the basement floor elevation is, helps a lot. Make sure that it's gonna flow underneath it.
Everybody good with these?
Show ledge outcropping within 50 feet of the system. Nitrogen sensitive areas.
On all plan sheets, not just the ones you want to.
2-foot contours, that's specifying what we want on the pumps, you know, volumes and elevations. Don't expect us to calculate out the gallons, even though we can, just base it. And then
So
just
Fred
for,
had a comment here in 5.1.13. You wanted to include the source of electricity, Fred?
Yes.
So where would we add that?
I put it after 5.1.12.6.
As a separate section or like including electricity at the end of this phrase?
That's up to you.
yeah, and the goal on this was we get calls, people looking for records on this system.
Yeah.
So if we can, especially with digital storage now, if we could have that stuff available. Someone can look up and say, oh, I have a Barnes such and such pump, rather than,
Or a generator.
it's true too, so knowing that it's got backup power or something.
Okay. 5.1.4,
So this is something that I threw in. New construction requires a drainage permit from the engineering department. repair systems get regraded and no one looks at what the effects of the drainage are.
I'm sorry, new construction requires a review by the engineering department?
That's true.
Well, it's
Yeah.
like, when you pull a building permit,
So
like when I
for
built
like all-
my
yeah, for
building.
you have to do that
permit years
drainage,
ago,
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to sign off on a drainage plan,
yeah, so.
or tell you that you don't need one.
Yes. This just, my thought on this was that if we review a plan and it looks like they're funneling all the water to an abutting lot, we can say, hey, maybe that's not your best route and give us some authority. And I bring this up because I dealt with one in North Andover where someone built on their property and funneled all the water onto the abutting septic that was sloping towards the other property that they mounted the system. So now all the water's sitting on his septic and it's causing failure. So it's just kind of, sometimes people don't look outside the lot. It's common sense, but I don't know that we have the right to say to someone
David, is that sort
that doesn't comply to Title V.
Right.
I don't know how often it'll come up.
Yeah, and that's more of like a site grading thing, you think, rather than just related to the septic.
Right, but a lot of times on a repair system, you're only regrading the septic and no one else looks at it except for us.
Right, that's a good point. Yeah.
So
It's
Dan,
like out on Bungalow Road right now. That system they're putting in, the neighbors are really concerned because they had a system put in 3 years ago from another neighbor and it went up 3 feet. And they pitched all the water to their house. Now they're having another system put in and they're pitching all the water to their house. And so they're trying to, they were talking to the installer when I was out there, like, can you just build a swale so their system, any water stays on their side? Basically.
And I mean, if it's going there existing, it's really not an issue. But if it's redirected, rather than get involved in some sort of a civil dispute that, hey, you approved the plan. It's like, well, I really didn't have any right to change it, that Title V, it's shutting off the system. And, there's no one else looking at these drainage plans, so it just gives us some.
Right, where I ran into problems was with Castle View 2. And there were tanks and research chambers, and they were placed up high and they're impervious. And they were creating drainage going onto other people's property. And that was an issue, because they're not pervious.
so it sounds like there's a need for this then.
Would this open us up though, like if we didn't review this review this and then. Like say it slipped through
They're like, you,
and they're like, well,
All right.
this is in your regulations, like. So we're opening ourselves up to potentially like. I mean, not that I'd wanna skip over, but it's not, I mean, if we make it part of our checklist, then we know that it's there for local upgrades. But. I'm also not an engineer.
right,
I mean, I understand water flow and grades and things like
But
that.
we're asking them to show that on the plan.
Yeah,
I don't
I don't know that we're actually,
harmless.
yeah, so it's just saying that they need to show on the plan where the water is gonna be directed to.
Can they make a statement on the plan that no water will be redirected? And
So,
And then they are tasked with the engineering.
yeah, maybe that's a better way to, would you rephrase it to say
I
that?
kinda like that.
Yeah,
I think
statement
that's a
shall be
little bit
made
better.
on the plan that the result of the surface grading will not result in
Right.
additional offsite.
Right.
Yeah.
flooding, yeah. This one's the next one's a pretty minor one, but
Hold on.
What number, please?
15. 5.1.15.
Yes.
We're just looking for kind of a bold place that it says the system is not designed to include a garbage grinder. If you knew how much time is spent going through the notes on on plans, that if it was just in a big bold spot someplace, it'd probably save 10 minutes of review, and that turns to hours pretty quick. And one of the things we are talking about is that, and I'll reach out to Thor as well, trying to come up with just a standard CAD board that would be available with all the standard notes for everyone to use. So we always know that note 7 is gonna cover this, and we can go right there and check it off. If you don't use it, that's fine. It may take you a couple days extra to get your review back, but if you do use it, then we know that, you know.
If a person puts a second tank in, though, they can have a garbage truck, correct?
No, it's the
No.
You
size
can
of the
just
field.
design it.
Yeah, it's
They can
the
design
size of
it,
the
yeah.
field.
It has to be 150, but it's.
But it's a first settling tank,
That helps,
But
but the
It's
size
just-
of the field has to be
so it's a
larger.
no.
150%, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Yeah, so. It's just a matter of, and that's, again, that was a selfish one, just to make these reviews a lot easier.
So 5.1.6 is coming from Suzanne again, basically making sure that they are stating that they've done the work to prove that there's nothing within the setbacks from a well standpoint.
That was in one of Leslie's notes that was discussed, and again. We pull up GIS and do a real quick look, but it's nice to know that the engineer's signing off on it, that they did the check as well. Doesn't mean that they're infallible, but makes me feel a lot better. This is a pretty standard one, which we require, but that's not stated anywhere that, you know, no changes be made without prior approval. And so that's the thing too, is we get a lot of requests for field changes that seem pretty minor. Generally, we tell them that seems okay, but you're at risk until the designer, because we don't want to take responsibility for a change. So you're at risk until we get a letter from the designer saying that, yep, you can move that over 6 inches or a foot or whatever, you know? Then for repair and upgrades, just certifying that everything that go into the wastewater, this is some homes used to have the old separate cesspool for laundry, for gray water, that sort of thing.
There's, yeah.
Repairs that they went in and actually looked at, there's no garbage grinder. And then, you know, just other discharges that could cause issues with chemistry, like water softener discharges and that sort of thing.
Guys good with that? Are we still focusing? Are we all with us? Are we all still here?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, good.
I do have to leave at around 6.
That's it, okay.
So the last one, I don't know that it's something I kind of threw in there because I've seen a lot that the guy who does the soil testing isn't always the guy who does the design, and the guy stamping the plan isn't always the guy who did the design, so it's nice to have that whoever's certifying the design says that, hey, at least I've been on site once.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
So that,
All right, so if it's 5:52 right now and we're on 6 building renovation, do we want to take a break here, or do we want to keep moving? I know, Thor, you say you have a hard stop at 6, is that correct? This meeting was scheduled from 4 to 6 as well, so that's.
Okay, how about if we bring the rest up later?
Pardon me?
How about if we stop at 6 and bring that up at the next?
Yep, sounds great. Now, I would hate to wait a whole month to do this, so I'm wondering if there's a willingness to reconvene.
sure.
And keep talking through, whether it be the full quorum or if, you know, a subset, however you'd like to operate, but we'd really like to keep making progress on these so that if possible, we can get to the board meeting,
I think doing some sort of a committee meeting instead of a whole
a full
quorum
quorum.
of either
Yeah,
board might make it go faster.
Yep.
You have to post it though.
No, so if we don't have, right now, we do have a quorum and we're just discussing, we haven't agreed to anything. Obviously, we have to have a hearing for these to be adopted by the Board of Health. But what I was proposing is that perhaps a subset, and you know, I don't know, Eric and Marco, if you guys are happy to have us kind of come back only and show you at the Board of Health meeting. And obviously as a pre-read before that as well, instead of having you kind of sit through and hash through this, it's your own, whatever you want. So welcome you, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
That's no more than 2.
No more than 2. Joe will not be here. So,
Whatever works best.
so can we exclude you so we don't have a quorum to keep this? Is that okay?
Summarize that.
We are gonna, well, we're gonna deliver a finished set of goods. Yeah, so instead of me just sort of listening through all of this, if that's all right with you. And Eric, would you like to stay on would you like to meet prior, you know, continue to meet on this with us? And yes?
If I'm available, yes.
Okay. All right. And then can I just ask, is there any availability to kind of meet on this within like next week and see how
Next
far?
week, surprisingly good for me.
Okay. All right, and then if we all can't make it, are you guys okay with us advancing the cause and so, you know, continuing to iterate? So I'll keep the documents shared to all, you can keep commenting, but whatever subgroup of us can keep meeting on this, that would be
And there might be some things that we don't come to agreement on that you guys just leave open to future discussion with the
hearing,
full, yeah.
At the full board.
Thursday or Friday of next week, I can do.
Yeah. And you too?
I'm guessing because.
Okay.
Next week
And
is,
Thor, I would love to have you as well, if that's possible.
Yeah, I think Thursday would work.
Okay.
What time?
I don't want to open my calendar if I'm in public forum, but I will let, how about we circle back and I'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
You know, just see my calendar, they instantly feel like that for a woman.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Looked on, do you have next Thursday?
but I should, yeah, good call. I'm not really, I'm the scribe here, though.
No, I'm
I am
just
not the
noting.
content expert here, as long as somebody else can fill that role, like Cody.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you so much for all that
Thank you for your
time.
focus on.
Back to you, Chairman.
Motion to adjourn. Do we need a motion or can we, actually, no, be honest.
Second.
all in favor?
All in favor? Or yes?
Firing shit down. Yes.
All right.
Missing seats.
I'm
Yeah.
second.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Colin. That must have been a lot of work.
It was.
No,
Working very hard.
obviously.
No, it's actually a lot of Tony, a lot of Cody, everybody in the health department's been working on it.
I know.